So, Presidency Part 3. We were interrupted because I had to show a cute video of my daughter. So, then we come to the succession. Does anybody know who becomes president if the president can no longer be president? The vice president, good. Does anybody know who becomes president after the vice president?
I think it's the secretary or the speaker.
You're down a little bit. You're down a little bit. Who said the speaker? Speaker Pelosi, yeah. And after Speaker Pelosi? No. So the vice president we got, the speaker. The speaker has to resign from Congress before taking over. It is illegal to work for two branches of the federal government at the same time. Then after the speaker comes the president pro tem of the Senate. Oh, remember that, because on this next test, I'm going to ask you who he is. So remember the president pro tem and know who he is, because that will be on the next test. I promise you. I got one student evaluation that was complaining about me asking about this obscure position. It's not an obscure position. Yes?
What if the speaker doesn't resign, but it automatically goes?
If the speaker won't resign, she can't become president. So it would go to the president pro tem. And this is the president pro tem right now was an octogenarian, which means he's 80 plus. His name's Patrick Leahy. He's the senator from Vermont. So I would remember that, Patrick Leahy, the senator from Vermont. It's not obscure because he's third in line for the presidency, right? The position does wield some power. Then we come to the secretaries. Starts with the Secretary of State, and we go all the way down the cabinet secretaries in the order that their departments were created. In the order that their departments were created. Down to Homeland Security, which was a 2005 invention under George Bush, the younger. So, the Secretary of Agriculture would become president before the Secretary of Homeland Security. The Secretary of Energy would become president before the Secretary of Homeland Security. Secretary of the Treasury would become secretary before the Department of Defense. Secretary of Defense, excuse me. Or am I wrong on that? Let me check that. Yeah. Cabinet secretaries in order of succession. Yeah. Treasury would come before defense. Now, some of this is a little wonky, isn't it? I'd rather the Secretary of Defense take over before the Secretary of the Treasury. I'd rather the Secretary of Homeland Security take over before a lot of these guys, especially the Secretary of the Interior. Nothing against the person occupying the office or any of them beforehand, but that's just not a position that's in, that involves, that would be up to running the country. So the Speaker of the House used to come after the President pro tem of the Senate. until the Truman administration. Truman liked Sam Rayburn, who was the Speaker of the House at that time. He was his drinking buddy. So when this was revised in 1947, Sam Rayburn was still Speaker, and he was put right after the Vice President in terms of succession. And I forgot to tell you about this, the President's pension, which also was another Harry S. Truman thing. So after Truman ended his term of office, he went back to Independence, Missouri, and he was an older man. He still had a haberdashery shop, and he went back to kind of sort of selling hats, but that wasn't really a big thing anymore. At the end of his term of office, fashion had kind of moved on. So a congressional delegation was sent out there to ask his advice on something or the other. And they saw the very sorry state in which he was living. And yeah, it wasn't good. He was poor. And they went back to D.C. and decided that this was not a way for a former leader of our country to live. So they voted presidents, including him, and from then on out, a pension, so that they could live in some standard to which a leader of our country should live. Because you don't want to be president and then, we're sending the guy to the poorhouse after that. Now, is a pension still necessary for a president? I would say no. Because the president, President Obama, for example, is making bank on the lecture circuits with all the books he's writing, speaking engagements, things like that. So does the president necessarily need this $200,000 pension? Well, maybe if he wants to retire, just retire, not do anything anymore. Yeah, maybe, but there are a lot of ways. I mean, I'd be very interested if the school somehow came up with the money to have President Obama come here and speak. I mean, I'd be in the audience. I think most of us would. But that's up to the president. But I wanted to make sure I told you that. So we're about to play the link on slide 9, and for copyright compliance, I'm going to stop the video here.